we were ringing Tokyo, or you will have to understand that this is the best Adrian could do.
We were even more thrilled to discover that Editorial Officio was coming to London. And we asked Adrian whether he would infiltrate.
He's me, Editorial! In the hotel behind me, his very special night is the African Awards 1988, presented by the... So I just sat straight down next to this African chief and a couple of other people on this table, and they all looked at me, and I went, "Thor, what is for dinner?" Je m'appelle Adriano. Vous êtes de quel pays? Oh, I don't understand.
A tricky moment came when some of the guests were obviously mystified. Where could this good-natured loony come from?
At my office in Barcelona. He's how you say, Spanish, but I Spanish, but my mother Japanese.
That's Life was a fantastically powerful combination of entertainment, comedy, strongly based in human interest and wacky stories and, as you know, sexually shaped vegetables and other issues that affect the nation. But actually, really strong consumer journalism, hard stories, investigations, revelations.
On That's Life, we pioneered many of the techniques that are now very common. So we got the earliest generation of little tiny miniature cameras and we hid them into things like jackets and bags and did a lot of covert filming.
One of the main stories we did was something called Cut and Shut. Now, that's where you have two accident-damaged cars, and what you do is you chop them and take the good halves of both cars and weld them together.
And there you see the front and back of two quite different cars welded along there.
It was a really good story because these cars are really dangerous. No matter how good a job you think you've done in them, people lost their lives with these things.
Then we discovered a professional car dealer in Southampton who sells a surprising number of cut and shuts.
And he turned out to be a really, really dodgy character. The police had been after him for years. Trading standards had been after him for years. But nobody could ever just get enough to pin it on him. So I went in my disguise and all the undercover gear. We arranged to meet him in a car park in Romsey.
Yeah, not been in a bumper or anything like that? Nothing at all, mate. Right, okay.
What he didn't know was that we were actually bringing the AA along to do a survey of the car.
Yeah. Well, where this is all undulating here, that's all been, that pillar's been cut, isn't it?
Cut?
I mean, to use the terminology that we all bandy around, you know, a sort of cut and shut car, couldn't it?
And the guy he wanted to go at this point, and I couldn't keep him there. So he got in the car to go off.
Get it?
And I ran across to try and confront him. And he'd boxed himself in the car park. There was only one way in and one way out. So I ran across the car park to try and block his way, thinking this guy will stop. But instead of slowing down to talk to me, he actually put the foot down, and as you can see, I was very, very lucky to get out of the way in time. I just remember thinking, after he tried to kill me, I thought, I'm going to get you. And I chased after him. I thought he'd stopped here, but he actually just put the car in reverse and tried to get me again. So by this time I was completely horrified, and there you can see him speeding off into the distance, but luckily without a sail. We got him in the end.
You sometimes had to take a serious item and treat it in a light way, and the viewers didn't mind. They didn't mind. They might have lost thousands, but it was a kind of catharsis. They used to feel really good after it had been aired, because at least they'd had their say.
I remember one night I was writing the script very late one Friday night, and I'd written enough, and Norma came down with something that I just couldn't resist. And it was one of those stories when the lady is on electricity, and she starts getting threatening letters from the gas port saying if she doesn't pay her bill, they're going to cut her off. And then she gets more letters, and then they arrive, and they try and cut it off. And I remember writing it.
Anyway, when she opened the door, he said,
"Sorry, madam, I'm afraid I'm here to cut you off."
At last! Come in! I've been longing for this moment. Down the hall, under the stairs, it's the door on your left.
He didn't move. He said,
"There's something odd going on here."
No, look, here's the cupboard.
Housewives don't usually react this way when I come to cut them off. It's as if you couldn't care less.
Mustn't grumble. Here's the meter, look.
So he he looked at the meter, not connected to anything, and at the dial, reading 0000. Then he looked at her and said,
How can you run your appliances off this?
You'll never guess.
Tell me.
Are you ready for this? I've got no gas!
I've always been intrigued by con men because they're frequently very bright. And it's quite funny, in a horrible sort of way, that they use all that brain to deceive people. They regard consumers as walking wallets.
and now, the latest news of our investigation into Bylin tea. It's promoted by Samantha Fox as a slimming tea. You must have seen the posters in the shops.
I lost 7 pounds without having to diet.
I think the worst one I actually met myself was Peter Foster of Bylin Slimming Tea.
It's been a very busy week for us in our office. We've been awash with writs and rats. And it's all thanks to Mr. Peter Foster, bosom friend of Samantha Fox. She's the two on the right. He's the one on the left. Mr. Foster sells Bylin tea and guar gum. And he's extremely cross with us for criticising them.
We've sold 900,000 packets in this country and we've had less than 300 complaints.
Now, 900,000 packets at about £5 each is £4.5 million. So this is big business.
What it really did was give you the runs. That's, if it had any effect at all, it left you stranded in the smallest room for long periods of the day.
Esther's vendetta. She's trying to ruin me, says Sam's fella. Another Sun exclusive.
And we hounded them around the world.
The bad news is that Marketa Tamanen, whose father is Finnish, has just written to us to say,
look what I found in a Helsinki newspaper. Bylin tea, they're selling it in Finland now.
What's that bit on the right mean? Britillisin ja television esitama.
That means as seen on British television.
Us! The cheek of it!
He said to me, Esther Ranson, I am your worst nightmare. And he was. He had cold little eyes. He had no compunction whatever.
Hello. After all this time, do sit down. As a mother, I mind about your perception of humanity as a series of potential victims. I mind that you look for the worst and the weakest, and you exploit it.
So
and I mind that money for you is such a power symbol.
You're frightened now, aren't you?
No, I'm angry. This is an angry woman.
Because you recognise this document. This document is not Playboy magazine, Miss Ransom. This is the British Journal of Nutrition, page 90.
Dreadful man, appalling man. Sold pictures of Samantha Fox's putative nursery to a newspaper because he said she was pregnant when she wasn't.
And in return for that piece about Samantha being pregnant, he also got a half page for another slimming con.
How could you do that? You fix up a room in your house as a nursery, you put in 25 cuddly toys and a tortoise-shaped pot.
Miss Ransom, none of that is true. Miss Ransom, I'm your worst nightmare come true. Because I don't give in without a fight.
I know.
And you're well ahead on points.
You keep bouncing. As fast as we chased him, he changed his tune. And in the end, he ended up, I believe, in jail in Australia.
That's life had tremendous power. And that was something I was always very, very conscious of, that it was a kind of power for good, but it had to be handled with tremendous care. We were tackling huge corporations. We were tackling vile con men. We were looking into uncovering stones that hadn't been uncovered before. We were in dangerous territory an awful lot of the time. And I think I look back with a tremendous amount of pride that in the main we handled that power with fairness and sensitivity.
There was a moment in the history of That's Life when we went from doing the pure consumer, my boots have fallen to bits, my washing machine doesn't work, my car is a lemon item, to the life and death items, you know, resuscitating children and playground accidents, that sort of thing. And I think for me, Ben Hardwick was the turning point.
On Wednesday of this week, we had a phone call in our office from Debbie Hardwick, who lives in Chessington in Surrey. Her story is quite simple, but desperately urgent. She said,
my little boy, Ben, is 2 years old. He's going to die in the next few weeks. We need help. You are our last resort.
We asked what's wrong with Ben. She said,
he has a liver disease. He was born with it. It's called biliary atresia. And although the doctors have tried to save him with 2 operations, they couldn't.